Hey there everyone, and welcome to the new course section. It is the most exciting part of this course where we will be building the full-fledged production level application. So in this section, we will be exploring all the things, all the best practices which are followed when we are building something production grade. So it will be a pretty exciting section and there will be a lot to learn. So just follow along. So what we are going to build in this section is a classic e-commerce app. So why e-commerce? Because with the help of e-commerce app, you will be able to understand each and every concept very clearly, like all the relations, validations, user authentication, role-based authentication, how to differentiate between admins and a regular user, and all these things. So it will be pretty good project to implement, and we'll learn quite a lot. So what we'll be building? So here are the database tables that we'll be having. So one is the users, products, cart, and orders table. Apart from these, like there will be several other tables as well, like the pivot tables between order and products, and so we'll figure that out when we like move forward in this section. And similarly, like here are the routes for the user. We have a login route and a sign up route, and then a me API to like get the logged in user based on the auth token. So here we'll be like implementing the full authentication system, how it's being implemented in the production, role-based authentications, all the middlewares, like how to differentiate between user, admin, which route can be accessible, which route can be accessed either by like only by admin or by user. So we'll be exploring a lot. Similarly, for the products as well, we have all these routes, products, and get, put, and delete. And this is a search API for the product, in which we'll be exploring a totally new concept, which is a full text search. Like not new, but a new compared to this course, because we haven't touched on full text search, how to do it in Prisma. So we will perform that. And for the cards, we have all these APIs and orders. So I'll link this image in the resources of this lecture so you can follow along like what we are going to build. So this is the high level overview of all the routes that we are going to build. Obviously, there will be some addition to this when we like move forward in this course, and I'll convey to you as we follow along. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to like teach all these things to you. And most important, we'll be using TypeScript for this. So we'll be using Node.js, Express, TypeScript, and obviously Prisma. So yeah, so follow along, learn as much as you can through this project and try to implement in your production level applications as well. So see you inside the section. Now let's go ahead and set up the project. So I have my terminal open and I'm in my desktop folder. Like you can create the project in whatever folder you want. I'm creating it on the desktop. So first of all, what I'll do is I will create a directory. I will say mkdir e-commerce, and then I'll navigate into that directory, and then we will initialize a node project. So to initialize a node project, we have to say npm init, and we want to keep all the defaults. So our node project is initialized. Now we will install some dependencies. So obviously we need TypeScript. So we'll say npm install TypeScript, and it will be a development only dependency, because obviously when the code will go into the production, we have to compile that TypeScript into JavaScript to upload that on the production. So we need TypeScript only for the development phase. So we'll say save dev. So it will take some time to install. So it's installed. So next we will say we will initialize this project with the TypeScript. So to initialize it, we will say npx tsc, it's a TypeScript compiler, and we'll say init. So it will initialize the project and it will create some files. So, and that file is, you can see that tsconfig.json. So it holds all the configuration for the TypeScript. So now in the next step, what we will do is we will install the types for the node. So we'll say npm install types/node, and it will also be a development only dependency. So it will give all the type safety for all the node APIs like files, process, and operating system. So all these things. So that's why we need it. And the JavaScript, we don't need this. So let's install this. So we have all these things installed. Now let's open this folder in the VS Code. I'll say open, and inside the desktop, we will say e-commerce. Okay, so you can see that all the, okay, allow this. Yes. So you can see all the files are there. We have tsconfig.json, we have package.json. So here we have two development dependencies, which is type/node and TypeScript. And now we will create a folder here. So just go into the terminal and say mkdir. It will be a source directory where all our source code will go. Okay, so inside the source directory here, we will create a file which is index.ts. So yeah, so we have all the files. Now we need couple of things. So first we need Express. So we'll install npm install Express. So let's do this. And for the body parcel, we will use the inbuilt middleware of Express only, which is JSON. Now we'll say we have the Express. Now we will install the types for Express as well. So we'll say in npm install head types /express save dev. But you'll see that all the types are installed as the development dependency. So as I already told you, the code of the TypeScript will be compiled to JavaScript before going to the production. So we don't need these types in the production. So let's install this as well. And it's giving an error. Okay. Maybe I guess we don't need it, because I remember in the latest version of Express, they include the types automatically in that Express package itself. So let's see, like we will go through the code. If we'll face any errors, we will try to resolve that together. So yeah, basic folder structures are ready, like basic project is ready. Now in the next video, we will see how we can initialize the Express and get our project running. So see you in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and create our first Express route. So we'll say import from Express. And if you hover over this, you will see that it's asking to install the types, like which we were trying to do earlier, but there was a typo here in the package name. So it's Express, not expe. So we'll again do this. And let's try to install this again. Okay. So this time it's installed, and you can see that the error is gone. So now we will create an app. So we'll say const app is equal to Express, and we'll say app dot get. We'll say on the home route, and we'll create a controller request comma response, and we'll say response dot send and working. So, and now we'll say app dot listen, and we will listen on port 3000, and we'll say console dot log app working. Okay, so we have this basic Express app here. Now in order to run this, we have to create a script here, but like since it's not the JavaScript, it's the TypeScript, so we need an extra package to compile this to JavaScript and run that. So in order to do this, we have this amazing library, which is TS Node. So first we'll install it, npm install TS Node, and we will also install nodemon for like hot reloading. And these will all be development only dependencies. Okay, so it's installed. Now let's go on to the home directory, and we will create a file, and let's call this file as nodemon.json. So here we will store the nodemon configuration. So it will be a JSON file. So first will be watch, and inside the watch we will say you have to watch the source folder. So inside the source folder we have all our source code. So source and second argument, second like configuration will be extensions. So inside the extension, we'll give a comma separated value. So we'll watch for JS extensions and .ts extensions as well. So apart from this, we will give the execute command. And inside the execute command, we'll say npx ts-node, and we'll say /src index.ts. So this is the node1 file. Now in the package.json, we will write a test script for this. So we'll say start, and inside the start, we'll say npx node1. Now let's try to run this. We'll say npm start, and let's see if it throws any error. Okay, so you can see that app is working. Now if you go to the route localhost 3000, you can see that it's working. So our express setup is working fine. Now in the next lecture, we'll create some more directories and we'll see how we can proceed from there. Now, as of now, we haven't utilized the TypeScript power. So what we'll try to do is we will try to assign the types for these variables, which is app, request, and response. So using that types of express package, like type/express package, we can now import some of the types. So we'll first import express, and then it will be request and response. So this app will be of type express. This request will be of type request, and the response will be of type response. And if you hover over it, you will see that these are all the interface types. So that's the beauty of TypeScript. Now you will get all the autocompletes here. So app.post and everything put. So you can see, and you'll say rest.json. So all the autocompletes are available, and it will implicitly check the types for you. So if you'll pass any wrong type there, so it will throw the exception in the compile time only. So yeah, so now let's go ahead and create some of the folders here. So first folder will be middlewares. Here we will store all the auth middlewares and role related middlewares here. And then we will say, no, not file, we'll create a folder, and the folder will be exceptions. Here we will store all the exceptions in the root. Yeah, so in the root, we will create a folder as controllers. So yeah, so as of now, you have seen that in the last lectures as well, we have written the controller here only, but now since like we are structuring the project, so we will separate the controller into the separate folder and its respected files. So yeah, and apart from controllers, what we need is schema. So here we will store all the validation schemas using yup, which we have studied in the previous section. And the next thing which we need is we need routes. Yeah, so these are all the folders that we need, and you will see that I did a mistake. I have created all the folders in the root. So we will move all the folders into the source directory. So it will go inside the source and routes and schema also. Yep, so now it's fine. So inside the source, we have all these folders. Now in the next lecture, we will install Prisma and we'll initialize few of the models there. So see you in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and install Prisma. So to install Prisma, first we will quit this server. Now we will say npm install Prisma, and we'll install Prisma client as well. So after these two packages are installed, we will initialize the Prisma. So we will wait until these packages are installed. Okay, so now we will say npx Prisma init. So it will initialize the directory with the Prisma. So if you go into the VS Code, you can see that we have this now Prisma file. Here we have schema.prisma. And by default, the provider is PostgreSQL, but we'll say MySQL. And inside the env, we have this file. So let's quickly go to the SQLite and create a database there. Say root, we will say password, connect. Okay, no, sorry, localhost as well. Now we will simply create a database. So we'll say e-commerce. So database is created. Now if we go back to this, we will say root and we'll say password. And localhost 5432 schema is equal to public. So yeah, I guess that's what we have to do. Now in the next lecture, we will create some tables like a user model and all these things, and we'll try to migrate it using Prisma migrate. In the last video, we have initialized Prisma, but in this database URL, we have to make 2 more changes. First of all, we'll need to change this provider to MySQL, and then we'll have to change the name of the database. In our case, it's e-commerce. So now it's ready. Now in the schema.prisma, we will create our first model. We will say model user, and in the user we will have ID, which will be of type int, and it will be primary key and auto increment, and default auto increment. We will have name, which will be of type string. We will have email, which will also be of type string, and it will be unique. We will have password, which will be of type string, and what else can we keep in the user? We'll have address, but it will go into the different database table. So as of now, we'll keep it simple. If we'll need anything else, we'll anytime come here and can add those fields. But apart from this, we need 2 more fields, which is created at. Created at will be datetime, and its default value will be now. So, and apart from this, we'll have updated at. It will also be datetime, and it will be simply updated at. And we will map this model to the name of users. Now go into the terminal and we'll say npx prisma migrate dev, and we'll say name as create users table. Let's see if it's if it runs or not. Okay, can't reach the database server, localhost 5432. Okay, I guess there is some mistake. So let me check the connection again. We'll close this. Okay, we'll say localhost. I guess it was working fine initially. Password is password connect. Yeah, so root and password. Let me see if I have made any typo in the password, root password. Okay, so yeah, the port is around 3306. Now I guess it should work. Let's see. Yeah, now it's in sync. Let's reload the database. And first choose the database. We have e-commerce, and you can see that we have this users table. So fine. Now in the next lecture, what we will do is we will try to create separate routes. So earlier, like in the previous course section, we used to define all the routes in the index.ts, but now since we have already seen, we have this routes folder. So we will split the routes based on different modules. So we will have separate route file for users, separate route file for products, cart, and orders. So we'll see how to do that. So in the next lecture, we'll set up that, and then we'll proceed to creating a login API. So see you in the next lecture. Now, before moving forward, in this video, we will try to set up the environment variables. So to set up the environment, as of now, we are using the hard code values of these ports. And in the future, when we will be using JWT, we have to store the secrets. Or if we are using some third-party services, we have to store the API keys. So we cannot hard code them in the code, because when we will push this code to GitHub, those secrets will be exposed, which is not a good thing. So we have to create an env file and put all the secrets on there. So as of now, we already have this env file, but this is for Prisma. So we are going to reuse this file to be used in the Node.js as well. So in order to use this setup, what we have to do is first we'll add this, in the git ignore, this file is already added. You can see that .env, because we don't want this file to be pushed to the GitHub, because as I already told, if we'll push it to the GitHub, the secrets will be exposed, which we don't want. Now to deal with this, to deal with the env file in the Node.js, we'll be using this package, which is .env. It's a very good package. You can see that it is a huge number of downloads as well. So we'll be using that. So let's first install this package. We will say npm install .env. So it's installed. Now in the source, we will create a file which will be secrets.ts, because here we'll be storing all the secrets. Now we will initialize this .env. So first we'll import it. Import .env from .env. Now you can see that it's not asking me to install the types explicitly, because this package, the types are inbuilt into this package, so we don't have to install it separately. Now to initialize this, we have to say .env .config, and here we have to provide the path of the .env file. We'll say path, and it's .env. It's a root path, so we can just directly specify the file name. Now we can export the constant. So first we'll try to export port, and port will be process .env port. Now what this env file does is it export all the variables defined here and make them available inside the process env file. So we'll say port is equal to 3000. So we'll say export const. Now it should work. Okay. Now in the index.ts file, instead of using this hard-coded port, we will say port, and it will be automatically imported from this secrets. Now let's try to run the server and see if everything is working or not. npm start, and you can see that it's running. And let's go to we will say localhost 3000, and you can see that it's working. So that's how env variables are set up. Now for the other people who are collaborating in this project, what we have to do is, since we have put this env file in the git ignore, so how do those people know what all variables they have to define in the env file? So to overcome that, we have to define this .env.example, and we will push this file to the GitHub, so that they have a template of what all the env variables they have to define in order to run the project locally. So we'll say port is equal to some port. We don't specify the actual port here, or maybe actual secrets here, because obviously we will not. So we just provide a dummy value there, and the people who are cloning this project, they can specify the values accordingly. So that's how it works. So in the next lecture, we'll define the routes now. Now let's go ahead and define the routes. So first we'll define all the auth routes, which are login and sign up. So in the routes folder, we will create separate route file for all the routes. So we'll say auth.ts, and inside this we will first import something from Express. And this something is router class. Now router class enables us to split the routes across multiple files and to use them. So we'll say const auth routes is equal to, we'll create the object of this class router, and then we'll say auth routes dot get, or maybe let's first define the type router, and then I guess we'll get the autocomplete. Yeah, dot get, and we will say login, and here we will provide the controller. So inside the controller, let's create a dummy controller here as well. So we will say auth.ts, and inside this we will export a function which will be export const login. It will be a controller function, so we'll provide an arrow function here, and it will take two arguments which will be request, response, and then we will say response dot send login works. Now we have to provide the types here as well, so we will say import from express, and we will import request and response. So we'll say request of type request and response of type response. So we have this file here, this login controller here. Now in the routes, we will pass this controller as login, so it will automatically import from here. Now in the routes file, like in the future, we will create all other files for like products, orders, and all these things. So we have to combine all these files into single. So first we will create an index file here, which will be index.ts. Now in this index file, we will combine all the routes. So again, we will do the same thing, import router from express, and we will say const root router. So it will be a root router. And then we will say a root router of type router. And now we will say root router dot use, and for the auth, for all the auth routes, we are going to use auth routers. So we have to export this as well. So we'll say export default auth routes. So in the index.ts, we will say auth routes. So it will automatically import from ./auth. And similarly here as well, we will say export default root router. Now since everything here is configured, now we will go to the index.ts file. Now in place of this, we will say app.use. We want to use that root router on API prefix. Like you can give the root prefix as well if you don't want to use any prefix, but I like to call my APIs with this API prefix. So I will say that, and I will say root router. So that's all we have to do to configure the routers. Let's see if it's working or not. The server is still running, and if we go to /login, okay, it's saying, okay, so it's not login, it's auth/login. Okay, it's still saying auth/login not found. So let's see what the issue is. We have missed the API as well. So we will say /API/auth/login. Now you can see that login works. So the path is as follows. First the API, and then it will go to the root router. Then it will find the auth routes inside this /auth routes module. And if you go into the auth routes, you will see that we have this login route defined as a get route. So this is how the code splitting is done inside the routers. We will define all the routes here for the auths like login, sign up, and then we will create a separate file for products, orders, and cards. And then we will merge all those files into index.ts file. So this is how it's being done. So now in the next lecture, we'll define the login route. We will finish the login route. We will see how JSON Web Tokens work, how to encrypt or decrypt the passwords. So see you in the next lecture. Now in this lecture, we will be finishing up all the auth routes, that is login and sign up. But before we proceed to that, we have to initialize the Prisma client. So we have imported this Prisma client from @Prisma client. Now we will say const Prisma client is equal to new Prisma client, and if that's it, like if you want to provide the log levels as well, you can say that log query. So we want all the logs for the database queries. Since we will be needing this Prisma client in the controller file as well to perform all the queries, we will have to export it. So we'll say export const Prisma client. Now let's move to the auth controllers. So in order to implement login and sign up, we will be needing two packages. One is this bcrypt and one is JSON web token. So bcrypt is used to store the hash of the password in the database so that the original password doesn't get exposed. And JSON web token is used to issue the JWTs for the front end or the mobile app so that they can authenticate the users in the further requests. So let's do this. So if you go to the terminal, like I have already installed these two. So if you go to the terminal and type npm install bcrypt and JSON web token, it will install all the dependencies for you. So let's go ahead and use it. So first we'll define the route for sign up. So in the sign up, we will be receiving all the data in the body. So first we will destructure that. So we will be getting email, password and name. So in the next lecture, we will see how we can define the schema and first validate it before the flow reaches to the controller. So we will see that in the next lecture. And now what we have to do is we have to first create the user. First, we have to check whether the user already exists or not. So we will say let user is equal to await Prisma client dot user dot find first where email : email, or you can just give the shorthand of this as well. And we have to make this as async. So if user is there, what we have to say is throw. We have to throw the error that user already exists. And if user does not exist, then we have to proceed further. So if user does not exist, we have to create the user. So user is equal to await Prisma client dot user dot create. And inside the create, we will pass the data. And in the data, we will say name, email. And for the password, we will say we have to import something from the bcrypt. So import, we have to import something from bcrypt, and that something is hash sync. And you can see that it's giving an error. So it means we have to initialize the type file as well. So just copy this, go to the terminal and install the types. And once the types are installed, you can see that if we retype this, it will give the autocomplete. So we will say password hash sync. We will say, password. And we will say the salt round will be 10. So it will iterate 10 times to generate a salt here. So it will generate the hash for this password and the user is created. Now we will say response.json and we will pass user. So I guess that's it for the sign up. Let's test this. Now in the auth routes, we will say post and we will import sign up and we will say sign up. So I guess that's all. Now let's run the server, npm start. Okay, now let's test this in the Postman. So we'll be creating the Postman collection for all the routes that we'll be defining. So the collection name will be e-commerce. And inside this collection, we will create our first directory, which is auth. So like this is how the things in the production are done. Like they are structured pretty nicely. Now in the auth folder, we will add a request and we will say it is a sign up request, and we will say http://localhost. It's not HTTPS, it's HTTP. Let's use this API auth / sign up. It's a post request, and in the body we will say raw, type will be JSON, and we'll say name, test, and email will be, let's say, test@gmail.com, and password will be, let's say, bc123. Now let's hit send. Okay, it crashed. Let's see the reason for the crash. Email is undefined in the request body. Okay, so before like using this, what we have to do is first we have to configure the middleware as well. So app.use, and we will say express.json. So remember, like earlier we have used body parser to parse all the JSON requests, but since Express has this inbuilt middleware which is JSON, so we will be using that. Now let's see if it's working or not. Okay, now you can see that it's working, and if you will notice the password, it's like encrypted or hashed. So that's how it works. So if like someone gets the hold of our database, so let's go into the database first. Connect this, go to the database, and in the users, if someone like gets the hold of the database, they will not be able to figure out the password because it's in the hash form. So that's the reason why we were using bcrypt as a hashing library. So that's it for the sign up. In the next lecture, we'll see how we can log in a user. Sorry, my bad. Log in the user and generate the JSON web token. So see you in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and finish the login route. So we will say, I guess, let's copy this and change the name here to login. And we will not be receiving the name here. So just email and password. This will be same, but here we will say if not user, if user is not found, then we have to say user does not exist. So we have to throw this error as user does not exist. And this will also change. Now first we will have to compare the passwords, like whether the passwords match or not. So in order to do that, we have to import something from bcrypt again. So instead of hash sync, we will say compare sync. Now hash sync is used to encrypt the password, and compare sync is used to compare both the password, the original password as well as the hashed one. So let's do this. So first we will say if not compare sync. Now here first we will provide the original password. So the password which we will be receiving from the request body. So we will say password, and second argument will be the hashed one. So user dot password, because in the database we stored the hashed one. So it will compare both the password, whether this hashed password, when it will be decrypted, whether it's same as password or not. So, and if it's not same, that's why like we have added not here. Then again we will throw an error which will be incorrect password. So all the checks are done. Now if everything is good, we will say token. We will then generate the token. And to generate the token, we will be importing the JWT library. So we will say import. We will be importing everything as JWT from JSON web token. Now again, we have to, I guess, install the types here. So let's copy this and go to the terminal. Quit this and let's install the types for JSON web token. Now you can see that the error will be gone. So it's gone. it will be token. So in order to generate the token, we have to say JWT dot sign. We have to sign a token with some payload, and we can provide anything in the payload. So generally, like we used to provide the user ID. So user ID, like for which user this token belongs, and we'll say user dot ID. And second argument will be the secret. So we haven't defined the secret yet. So we'll go into the env. We will say JWT secret, and you can give any secret here, random secret, which is hard to like decode. So just give any random key here, and in the secrets we will be needing this. So we will say export const JWT secret is equal to process dot in env dot JWT secret. So same thing, and here it will be port. Now in the auth.ts we will just import this JWT secret here. So I guess this is fine. I am not sure why it's giving an error. JWT.sign. Okay. Seems like it's good. Okay, so the error is like the second argument, like the JWT secret cannot be null. So like the env file, the env package that we are using to decode all these environment variables, they like parse it as either string or undefined. So they place a check like this env variable may or may not be defined. That's why it's a string or undefined. So we just have to append this here. So now it's saying a string because we are sure like this JWT secret is defined and it cannot be undefined. So, and now if we'll go to the auth.ts, sorry, and the controllers auth.ts, now you can see that the error is gone. So this JWT secret is used to again like decode the token in the middlewares, where we will be decoding the auth token, which will come from the front end. Now we will say response. We have already this. So we will say user comma token. So I guess that's it. Now what we have to do is we have to define the route. So we will say auth routes dot post login. So the route is defined. Now let's go to the postman and test it. So we will duplicate this request, and now we will change the name to login. Login, and in the body, now we have to omit this name because we just need email and password. Let's hit send. It's giving an error. Let's see what's the error is. Okay, so the server is not running. That's why I guess it was giving an error. Now let's try again. Okay, it failed again. Now it's running. Sorry, I was in a hurry. Now you can see that it's working. So it's giving the token as well. Now we will use this token as a header to authenticate the further request to uniquely identify every user. We will see that when we will be defining the middlewares. So that's how login works. And you can see that there is an issue here. We are getting the password. So we have to like, obviously, we don't have to send this password to the front end. So we will see how we can exclude this password from the response. So that's it from this video. See you in the next lecture. Now in this video, we will learn about error handling. So as you can see that as of now, in case of any error, we are just simply throwing error object. So this is not the best way of dealing with the errors. So you will notice that we have created a separate folder exceptions here. So we are going to work in this folder now. So first of all, we will create a root exception class. I'll explain you what that is in a minute. We'll say root.ts. Now if as far as exceptions are concerned, what you want to send. So first we want to send is the message. So error message, and then we want to send is the status code. So it is the HTTP status code, which is 404 and 401 and so on. And apart from that, we want to send the error codes as well. Now error codes are for front end to uniquely identify any exception. So for example, there is a localization on front end. So obviously we cannot send the message, error message in every language. So the front end determines the error message using the error codes. So that's why error codes are important. So these are the things which we want to send through the error code exceptions. And one more thing is the error, like the actual error which occurs, like the validation error or something. So the default error class of JavaScript does not provide these things out of the box. So we need to override that class. So for that, we will say class. We will create our own class, which is HTTP exceptions, and it will extend the exception class. Sorry, the error class of the JavaScript. And now in this, we will define all these things. So first is the message. Message will be of type string. And then we have error code. Now I will, as of now, we will give it a type of any. Like we will define the error codes inside enum. So we will do it in a minute. And apart from error code, what else do we need is a status code. It will be of type number. And apart from a status code, we need errors. It will be of type any because they can either be an object or the array. So all these things. Now we will define the constructor to initialize all these things. So we will get message of type string. We will get, we will get error code of type any. We will get status code of type number, and we will get error of type any. So we will say this dot message is equal to message. We will initialize everything. So error code is equal to error code. Here it will be this. Now we have status code is equal to status code. And now finally we have errors is equal to errors. So we have these things defined. Now what we want to do is we want to call the super method as well. So the constructor of this error class only takes the message. So we will say message. Yeah, so why is it giving an error? Okay, super must be called before this. So yeah, now it's fine. So we have defined this HTTP exception class. Now we will define this enum as well. So it's an enum of error codes, and here we will define few enums. So first one will be user not found, and let's give the error code of 1001. Like it's up to you, you can give any error codes, and these error codes will be shared to front end as well, so that they can match and get the exact error from that. Error code is user not found, and then we have user already exist. We can give it as 1002, and then we have incorrect password. We can give it as 1003. So as of now, like, let's work with all these three. If like in the future we will need more error codes, so we can come here and define it at any time. Now since the root exception is defined, now we want to create the class for each and every exception. So in the exceptions, first what we want to do is we want to create the class for bad request. So we will say bad request. ts, and in this we will say export class bad requests, and this best request exception we will say, and this will extend our HTTP exception. I guess we have not exported that. Now we will say HTTP exception. So this is all it is. So in the constructor, we will say it will get the message of type string, and it will get the error code as well of type error code. So I guess I haven't exported that as well, but I have. It's the error codes, not okay. So I guess it should work. I'm not sure why it's not working. Yeah, so error code. And apart from this, yeah, these two things are just required, and we will call the super constructor as well. And inside the super, first we will say message. First argument is the message. Then we have error code, I guess. Yeah, and then we have status. So for the bad request, we have the status of 400. So it's the predefined status for HTTP bad request exceptions, and it's still giving an error. And in the errors, we'll simply provide null. Now in the HTTP exception, I guess we have to change the type as well of this errors as error code, and here as well error code. Now it's the bad request. Now in the controllers, auth controllers, where we are sending this throw error, user already exists, so it's kind of a bad request. Or let's see how we can do this. First we'll give it a try, then we will change it based on the naming convention. So we will say throw, we will pass new, and we'll say bad request exception, and in the message we will say user not found, and the error code will be error code dot user already exists. So user already exists. Now in order like the express pick this exception, we have to define the error middleware as well. So in the middlewares, we'll create a file which is errors.ts, and here we will export a middleware, export error middleware, and this error middleware will be a function which will take. Now the error middleware, there is a special convention for express. The first argument needs to be the error, but in like the general middlewares, we have request, response, and next function, but here we have the error argument as the first error as a first argument. So we'll say it is of type HTTP exception, which we just created, and we have request, it will be of type request. Then we will have response of type response, and then we will have next function. Yeah, so that's how it's being done. Now inside this, we will return something, and we will say, sorry, it's an arrow function. And now I guess it should work. Okay, it's the const. Okay, now it's fine. So we will say response dot status, and response dot status will be the error dot status code and dot JSON, and inside the JSON we will say message will be error dot message error code will be of type error dot error code, and actual errors will be errors. So I guess that's all we need to define in the middleware. Now in order for Express to use this middleware, we will go into the index.ts and we will say app.use, we'll say error middleware. So that's all what we need to do. Now whenever any controller will throw any exception, this error middleware will automatically be called by the Express. So that's how it works. Now let's give it a try. In the Postman, we will try to create a user with the same email. Now let's see. It's giving an error. Okay, now in order to make this work, we have to do one more thing here. So in the controllers, we need to add this next function as well, which is like used to handle the errors and for the middlewares to pass the control to the next controllers and so on. So we will install this. So we will like not install, basically import this. So, and now what we'll do is we will call the next function with this error object. So whenever the next function is called without this error object, the control is passed to the next controller if there is any, because you remember like how Express works is in the routes, we can give as many controllers as we want, and these controllers are called as middlewares. So that's how it works. So whenever we call the next function without the error, the control is passed to the next middleware or the controller. But whenever the next function is called with the error object, the control is directly passed to the error middleware. And how Express knows about it? Because in the index, like we have given this middleware here. So we have asked Express to use this middleware, which is the error middleware. And whenever the next function will be called with the error object, this middleware will be called. So now let's give it a try and see if it's working or not. So let's see. We'll say hit send. Now you can see that it's working fine. We have the message as user already exists, error code as 1002, and error, we don't have any as such errors here. And the status code is 400 bad request. Now for your assignment, what you want to do is create another exception with this user does not exist as well as incorrect password, and let me know in the discussion section. And in the next lecture, I will give you the solution. And also in the next lecture, we will give a better way of handling these things, because obviously we cannot import next function in each and every controller and do this manually again and again. So we will find a better way of handling the errors. So see you in the next lecture. Hey there everyone. Now before moving forward and looking into how generic error handling works, here we are going to see how first of all a validation works. So if you have followed my previous lectures, we have used the Zod library, which is the, not this one, this one. Yeah, so we have used Zod library to perform all the validations. So we are going to use this to perform some input validations on signup route. So let's open the terminal first and quit this. npm install Zod. So it will install Zod, and I guess Zod also like automatically ships the types for it as well, the TypeScript types. So in the schema, I guess, yeah, we are going to create a file which is users.ts. We are going to store all the schemas related to user, like update user, create user, and all these things here only. So we will say, first we will import the Zod. So we will import. So we will import Z, and now we will create a schema. So const signup schema is equal to z.object, and inside the object we'll pass a object with all the keys which you want to take as an input. So let's first go to the Postman and see what all we want. We want name, email, and password. So we will say name. Name will be z.string, and that string will be not nullable. Sorry, not nullable is by default. So if you want to make it nullable, you just have to say nullable. So by default, it's not nullable. And email also will say z dot, I guess they ship with email validator, I guess. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. Yeah. So we'll say z.string and we'll say dot email. And for password, we will say z.string and dot, and we want like minimum length 6 maybe. So yeah, so this is how you define the schema. And now in order to validate the request, what we have to do is we have to go to the index.ts and we have to extend the Prisma client. So I guess the place where we have defined the Prisma client here we will say dot extend, and in the extends we will pass an object which will say query. We want to extend the query on users, and what you want to extend is create. So we want to like perform certain operations on create. So first will be args. Args is the like request body which you will receive, and then we have query. And then we will say args.data is equal to, then we have to like import the schema as well. So I am not sure whether I have exported it. So we will say export, and let's like name it in all caps. Sign up schema. So yeah, so index.ts we will say sign up schema.parse, and we will say args.data. And now we will say return query. We will perform the query with all the arguments. So this is how you perform the validation and extend the Prisma client. Like we have already discussed this in the validation section. Now, in order to handle this error, we have to go to auth.ts and we have to wrap this sign up into try and catch. So we will say try and catch. In catch, we will receive an error. So let's first move this code inside the try block. And inside the catch, we will say what we want to do is we want to first we want to like create a separate class for all the validation errors. So in the exceptions, we want to create a file, and that file will be validation.ts. And in the validation.ts, we'll say export class unprocessable entity. So it is like the official name for all the validation errors, and it will extends HTTP error, HTTP exception. Yeah. So this is the class that we created in the previous lectures. And then we will say constructor, and in the constructor we'll receive error, which will be of type any. And then we will receive message. And then we will call the super constructor. And the super first will pass message, error code, and all these things. So here we will like receive the error code as well of type string. Message will also be of type string. And in the super, so let's go to the HTTP exception and what all these things: message, error code, status code, and error. Okay. So message, and then it's error code. So in the error code, we'll simply pass error code, and then it's a status code. So for all the like unprocessable entity, we have 422 assigned status code, and then we will pass errors. So yeah, this is how it works. And I guess error code will be number. Okay, so now back to the controllers. In the auth, we will say throw. So we'll say first next, and in the next we will say new unprocessable entity, and in the unprocessable entity first we will pass errors. So errors will be err.cause.issues. That's how like we get all the errors from the Zod library. and these all will be nullable. So yeah, and then after this we will say message. So we will say unprocessable entity, and then what we are going to do is, then we have to pass, I guess, the error code. So in order to pass the error code, first we have to define the error code as well. So in the error code we will say and maybe we can say that 2001. It's like completely random, you can assign whatever you want. And back into auth.ts we will say error code dot unprocessable entity. So I guess this is what cause dot does not exist on type error. So error will be of type any, I guess. Yeah, this will fix the issue. Now let's see if it's working or not. Hopefully it will work. So go to the Postman, and first of all we need to run the server. So we'll go here, npm start. Okay, there are no compilation errors as of now. So first we will remove the name and see if it's working or not. It's saying user already exists. Okay, let's try to remove the email as well. Okay, seems like there is an issue. Okay, so the issue is, so if you look into the controller, so first we are doing is find first. So as soon as like this line is encountered, it automatically throws an exception like the user already exists. So what we want to do is, in order to like throw all the validation error prior, we have to validate it before everything else. Because if you will see in the Prisma dot, like where we initialize the Prisma index.ts, the validation is like only taking place when we try to create a user. So whenever a create method is called on the user, then only the validation kicks in. So in the controllers, the create function is after this line. So before, like after this error is encountered, then we are calling this create, and that's the main reason why we are getting this error. So in order to tackle this, what we want to do is we want to like perform all the validation checks before anything else. So most probably here or somewhere else. So let's try to do this. So first we will remove this from here. So we don't want to do it on create. Now go into the auth.controllers, and what we will say is, we will say signup schema.parse, and what you want to parse is request.body. So like whenever the controller code is reached, this statement is executed first. So it will perform the validation before anything else. Now here, in order to get all the issues from the Zod library, we will not call this cause. We can directly like call this err.issues. So now let's try to see if it's working or not. So we have removed email and password and hit send. You can see that now it's working. It says unprocessable entity, and we have all these errors here. So the name is undefined, the email is undefined and all. So let's try to give the name and email. So email is this, hit send. Now you can see that the error is only on the name, and if we get name also, you can see that user already exists. And if I modify the email as test1, you can see the user is created successfully. So this is how the validations are done. Now you can see a big downfall here. What is that? We have to like write these try and catch again and again in all the controllers and perform these logics. So we have to call the next again and again when we will throw any exception. So in order to like deal with this and like write the reusable code, we will define an error handler. So we will look in the next lecture how that's defined, because that's a very important part, and you will learn some best practices there, how the things are done in production. So let's catch up there. Now let's go ahead and see how we can do the generic error handling. So in order to like perform this, first we will create a file in the source directory, which we will say error handler.ts. Now inside this error handler, what we are going to do is we are going to define a function. We'll say export const error handler. And what this function will do, this function will take a function as a parameter. So we'll say method. So it will take a method as a parameter. So it will be of type function. So it's an inbuilt type where like the function is an inbuilt type in TypeScript. So it will take a method as a function. Now what it will return is it will return a controller function. It will return a controller function. So now what this controller function will do, so in order to make a function a controller, what we have to do is we have to pass 3 arguments: request. First will be the request, response, and next. It will be of type next function. So now it's a controller. So inside this controller, we want to say why it's giving an error because it's not imported, I guess. Yeah. Now here we will say try and catch. Now inside this try and catch, we want to execute the method which we have taken as a parameter. So we will execute that method, and that method will also be a controller function. So that method will be executed with all these parameters. So request, response, and next. So you can see that whenever we will define a controller, we will pass that controller to the error handler, and in return, error handler is responsible for like executing that controller by wrapping it inside a try and catch block and doing all the error handling out of the box. So the benefit of this is we don't have to like write try and catch again and again. We don't have to call next whenever there is an error. So this is handled behind the scene with this control error handler. So you can call this error handler as a high level function as well. Now inside this catch, we have to do a couple of checks here. So we will say if so first we will say if this error is an instance of HTTP exception. And if you remember, this HTTP exception is a class which we have defined ourselves. So if that error is an object of this HTTP exception, it means like it's a handled error. We have explicitly thrown that error. That's why it's an instance of HTTP exception. So here we will create a variable let exception of type HTTP exception, and we will assign this exception to error to exception. So exception is equal to error. Now in case if it's not the instance of HTTP exception, it means it's an unhandled error or the runtime error which we say, because we haven't thrown it. If we have thrown it explicitly, it must be of type HTTP exception. And if it's not the type of HTTP exception, it means it's an unhandled error. That's why you have seen on certain websites, there is a error message which says something went wrong or internal exception. So these are the kind of error that are unhandled. So in order to throw that error, first we have to define one. So in the exceptions, we will create a file which will say internal exception .ts, and we'll say export class internal exception which extends HTTP exception, and inside the constructor message of type is string, and then we will have errors of type any, and then we'll have error code of type number. Now what we will do is we will say super, and inside the super first we will pass message, then we will pass error code, and then the status code. Now the status code for internal exceptions or these unhandled exception is 500, and then we will pass the errors. So this is how we define internal exceptions, and in the root, we will define the error code as well. And we will say 3001, and let's change it to keep it consistent. So we will say 3001. And now inside the handler, what we'll say, if error is not the type of HTTP exception, we will say exception is equal to, and in the exception we will define the object of that internal exception. So we will say new internal exception. Inside the message, we will say something went wrong. This is the classic error message which you generally see on some websites. Something went wrong. And inside the errors, we will say error, and inside the code, we will say error code dot internal exception. And now once everything is done, we will call the next function with this exception. So this is how the error handling is done. So you don't have to try and catch this next again and again. So this all will be handled behind the scene by this higher order function which you just defined. Now in order to use this, we have to go into the routes.ts file, and where the place where we pass this signup, we have to wrap this signup into the error handler. Sorry, I guess. Okay, so error handler will say sign up, same goes with login as well. Error handler login. So let's summarize this. So inside the error handler, we have passed this controller which is sign up, and inside this error handler, it will return a function, and that function will be a controller function because it takes 3 parameters: request, response, and next function. And this controller function is responsible for calling the original controller with try and catch and all the exception handling out of the box. So if you go into the controller, which is auth.ts, here we can write simply this logic. We can remove try and catch, and we can simply use this. So let's try to test it first. So go to this and let's see. Okay, there is an error. I guess the server is not running. So let's run the server first. And by the way, you will get all the source code on the GitHub. So I'll give you the link. That's what I was doing in the free time. I was pushing the code to the GitHub. So let's say npm instart and see if there is any errors or no. So let's hit send now. It's still giving an error. That's fine. Okay, so the server was not up and running. Now it's working. So you can see that the error handling is working fine. And if I change this, okay, seems like there is still an issue. And the issue is, if I guessed it properly, it should be an async function, I guess. Async, and we have to await this method call. Now I guess it should work. And still cannot find name await. Okay. Now let's see if it's working or not. Yeah, it's working. So it was a problem of async and await. So that's how it works. It is a very best practice to consider in the production. You don't have to repeatable code, try and catch again and again. So yeah, I guess you learned something from this lecture. Now we will move forward and define all other routes. So the main focus of the next lectures will be first to define the role-based access, like the middlewares to control the role-based access. And the admin can perform certain actions and user can perform certain actions. So we will deal with that. So let's see you in the next lecture. In the previous lecture, we have seen how we can create a generic error handler. Now here are a couple of things. First, we can remove this next from here because we don't need it, because we are doing it inside the error handler function that we created in the previous lecture. Now inside the login, as you can see that we are still throwing these generic errors. So we need to replace it with the custom errors. So for user does not exist, we will create a separate error, which is 404 not found. So go into the exceptions and create a file, which is notfound.ts. And inside this, we will just copy this code, I guess. And we will change the name to not found. And the status code for this code will be 404 not found. And I guess everything is fine. And inside the root.ts error code, so we have user not found already there, so we don't need to create one. So just go into the login controller, and instead of throw error, we will say throw new not found exception. And inside the message, we will say user not found. So, and obviously we need error code as well. So the error code will be error code dot user not found. So this will do the trick. And inside incorrect password, so it will be bad request exception. So new bad request exception, the message will be incorrect password. And I guess we have the code. Yeah. So inside the code, we will say error code dot incorrect password. So this is all. Let's give it a try then. Inside the login, let's hit send. It's giving an error. Let's see if the development server is running or not. It's running. Okay. Okay, so it's working. I guess the server was in the reload phase. That's why it was giving an error. And if we change the password, let's say 1234, and hit send, you can see that it's giving an incorrect password error. So that's how it's being done. Now in the next lecture, we will see how auth middleware works. In this lecture, we are going to see how auth middleware works. So the goal of this lecture is to create a me API. So it will be /me, and it will return the logged in user. So the logged in user will be based on the auth token that we will send in the headers of any request. So remember the auth token that we have used in the login. So that auth token, we will be sending it in the headers of any request. And from that auth token, we will be determining which user is logged in. So for that, we have to create an auth middleware. So I have created a dummy middleware here with a boilerplate code. And also one more thing, I have created one exception here, which is unauthorized exception. So it has the status code of 401. So this error we will be throwing when the user is not authorized and he's trying to access some resources or the routes which are authorization protected, or maybe you can say login protected. So that's how it will work. So let's go into the auth.ts middleware and start working here. So there are a couple of steps involved. So first is extract the token from header. And second, if token is not present, throw an error of unauthorized. Third step will be if the token is present, comma, verify that token and extract the payload. And fourth step will be to get the user from the payload. Fifth step will be to attach the user to the current request object. So first step will be extract the token from the header. So let's do this. So the way we are going to do is const token is equal to, we will say request dot headers dot authorization. So we will be sending the token inside the authorization key in the headers. So we will get the token. If token is not present, so the second step is if token is not present, throw an error of unauthorized. So we will say if there is not any token. So this will convert it into truthy or falsy value. So if token is null or undefined, it will be converted into false, and this symbol will convert into true. So if token is not present, we will say next. So we have to call next here because we are not wrapping this auth middleware inside the error handler. So we will say next new unauthorized exception, and the message will be unauthorized, and the error code will be error code dot unauthorized. So if token is not present, we have sent the unauthorized exception. Now third step is if token is present, verify that token and extract the payload. So first, to verify the token, we have to import JSON Web Token library. So import everything as JWT from JSON Web Token. So we will say const payload is equal to JWT dot verify, and verify the first argument will be the token that we'll get from the header, and the second argument will be the JWT secret, which we have like set in the environment variables. So we have the payload, and this step can throw an unwanted exception or the runtime exception. So we have to wrap it inside the try catch. And if there is any error, this means the token is malformed or like not valid. So we will again throw that unauthorized exception error. And now we will move all this code inside the try block. Okay, so we got the payload. Now we have to get the user from the payload. So we will say const user is equal to, and we will say await Prisma client dot user dot find first, and inside find first we will say where id is equal to payload dot user id. So remember, inside the payload we have given this payload user id, so we are getting the user id from that payload. So it's giving an error because the payload is not defined. So we will say it is of type user id of type and the user id will be of type number. So I guess it will work. And this verify doesn't give any sort of that what you can say the type. So maybe you can say as any as of now and remove this type from here. So the payload can be of type any, and it will like get you rid of this error. So we have this user. Now check if the user is there or not. So if not user, then we will be again sending this exception, throwing this exception, which is unauthorized exception. And if the user is present, we have to attach that user to the current request. So request.user is equal to user. Now you can see that it's giving an error because the express request object does not have any such key user. So we have to extend that request object to attach that user key. So for that, inside the source directory, we will create another directory which will be types. And here we will be storing our overridden types. So let's create an extra file here for express.d.ts, and all the types are like we have to give the extension as d.ts. Now we will say declare module express, and here it will be declare, and here inside the express module there is an interface. We will say export interface request, and inside that request we have a user which will be of type user, and this user will be important from Prisma client. And one more thing, we have to import the express as well here. Import express, not like this. Yeah, so import express from express. That's how like we define the type override. So in the module express, there is an interface which is request, and on that request interface, we want to attach one extra type, which is the user type. So now if we go into the middleware, you can see that the error is gone. Okay, so and after this, we have to call the next because we want to pass the control to the next controller. So this is how the auth middleware is designed. So if there will be any error, we will come back and change here. Now in the controllers, we will define a me controller here. So we will say, let's copy this. And let's get rid of this. And we will say me. And in the request.response.json, we will simply say request.user. So in the auth middleware, we have assigned that user to the request object. So in the me API, we can directly send the user from that request. Now let's define the route here. And here we are going to say auth routes dot get. It will be a me API, and inside the me API, the middleware will be auth middleware, and the handler will be, the controller will be inside the error handler and me. So that's how it works. So it's fine. Let's give it a try in the Postman. Let's see if the server is working or not. Yeah, server is working. Let's create a separate request and add request, which will be me. And the URL will be auth/me. Let's hit send. And you can see that the message is unauthorized because we are not sending any headers. So in the key, we will say authorization. And in the value, we will be sending any token. So first, let's send any random token. And you can see it's still giving an unauthorized error. So let's go to the login and fetch one token from there. So let's hit send. It's an incorrect password. So I suppose it was ABC123. Okay, so we have this token here. Let's grab this token. Go to the me. And we have attached this token here. Now let's hit send. Okay, now you can see that we have the current logged in user. So it's working fine. So that's how auth middleware works. So let's recap this. We have designed a auth middleware where we are first extracting the token from the headers inside this authorization key. And if the token is not present, we are simply throwing an exception of unauthorized. Now, once we have the token, we will verify it whether it's valid or not. If the token is not valid, we are again throwing that unauthorized exception. And after that, once the token is verified, we are extracting the user from the payload. So when we are signing the token, we have given the user ID as a payload. Then we are extracting the user, and if the user is also not present, then it means that the request is unauthorized. So we are again simply throwing that exception. And if everything works fine, we are simply assigning that user to the request, and we are moving forward from here. And inside the controller, we have simply created a me controller where we are simply throwing request.user. So this is how auth middleware works. Now in the next lecture, we will see how we can create the role-based middlewares as well. So for example, if the user has had admin role, then only he's allowed to access some resources. So in the upcoming lectures, we will see that. Now in this lecture and the upcoming lectures, we will see how we can create role-based access management. So for that, in the user model, we will be having an extra property, which is the role. So for that, we will first create an enum. And we will call that as role. And here we will be having two roles. One will be admin and one will be user. And here we will have role, which will be of type role. And by default, every user will have a user role. So if we want to assign some user admin, we can directly go into the Prisma Studio and change it from there. So this is how it works. Now go to the terminal and create a migration. So let's quit this and we'll say npx prisma migrate dev, and we will give it a name of add roles to user. Okay, so it's done. Now let's run the server again and go to the new terminal and run Prisma Studio here, npx Prisma Studio, and it's running on localhost 55. We will say Chrome. We will open the Chrome, and inside the Chrome we will say localhost colon 5555. So here is the Prisma Studio. We have one model user, and you can see that by default. So by default everyone has a user role. So if you want to edit any of the user, for example, I want to edit the first user, and just simply click here and just say admin. Save one change. So now the user one has the role of admin. Now we will use this user to create the products, because in our system we want only admins to create and update the products. So in the next lecture, first we will create the product model, and then we will create a simple route which will be a post route which is used to create a product, and on that route we will place that role-based middleware. So let's see you in the next lecture. Now let's move forward and see how we can create the role-based access middleware. So for that I have done few things. So first I have created a product model. So it's pretty basic. So it has ID, name, description, price, and tags. Tags will be the comma separated values, and we have two time fields, which is created and updated at. And then we have named this table as products. So the products table is created, and in the controllers I have created a separate file which is products.ts, and inside here we have this create product controller, which is pretty basic. Apart from that, in the routes folder I have created a separate file for the products route. So it's also the boilerplate code, and inside index.ts I have used this route against a /products path. So this is all we have. So now let's go to the products controller and try to create one. So we will say const product is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot create, and inside the create we'll pass the data. We will pass everything in the request body except the tags, because we are going to store the tags as the comma separated values. So in the input we will receive the tags as an array. So for example, we will receive, let's say T, and it's let's say from India. So we want to transform it something like this, T comma India. So for this we are going to say request dot body dot tags dot join, and we are going to join it using comma. So this is how we are going to do this. And here is a quick assignment for you guys. You have to create a validator for this request. So just create a validator. You have to validate all the data which is coming inside request.body, and you have to throw the exceptions. I guess you don't need to throw the exceptions. It's automatically done by error handler. So just create a validator and use it here. Let me know the solution in the discussion section. So, and apart from this, we will say response.json, and simply we will say product. So it's completed. Now in the routes folder, we will use this products routes dot post, and for the simple slash route we are going to use the error handler for create product. So this is what we are going to do. Now let's give it a try. As of now, this route is not role protected or any sort of permissions given on this route, so any user can create a product. So let's give it a try first. So in the user, earlier, like I have given this role to user one as admin. Now I'm going to change this, and we will simply say user here. Now let's go to the Postman and create a simple folder, new folder for all the product related routes. We will say products. And here we are going to create a request which will be add product. So you have to learn all these things because these things are done in the companies where you have to structure these requests or the documentations. So it's obviously a good practice to do this. So on API we have products and we have to create a post request, and inside the body we will pass the JSON. So let's give it a name. I will say T. Inside the description you will say that a sweet tea, just the random one. And for the tags we are going to say it's a tea from India. And for the price we are going to say it's 20. And do we need anything else as well? Let me check. Name, description, price, tags. So that's all what we need, I guess. So let's hit send. Okay, so it's giving an error. What the error is, because we are not running the development server, so we will say npm start. Okay, now let's give it a try again. It's working. So there are two things which we need to take care of. First, this route is not either authentication protected, not role-based protected. So first, we want to give a auth middleware here. So inside the routes, inside the products, so we will say, first we will say auth middleware. And as soon as we say auth middleware and try to run this again, so let it hot reload. And if we send this request again, you can see that it's failed because in the headers, we are not sending any authorization header. So we will say authorization. Let's copy the token from the me API. Copy this and here. So now let's hit send. So you can see that again the request was successful because now we have the authorization token here. So the request is authenticated. Now what we want to do is we want to create a role middleware. So in the middleware, what we want to do is we want to create a file which will say admin.ts. So this middleware belongs to the admin. So all the admin users are only allowed to authenticate this request. So let's copy the boilerplate from here and use this. Let's remove everything from here. We will say admin. We will say admin middleware. And inside this middleware, what we are going to say is, first we will get the user, and which will be request.user. The order of these middlewares are important. So before this admin middleware, we have to give the auth middleware so that we can get an access to the user object on this request. So once we have this request, so we will say if user.role equal admin, then we are going to say next. Else, if it's not an admin, then we are going to say next. Or maybe we can simply copy the exception from here. We are going to say it's unauthorized. So we have to import this as well. So we are going to say, let's try to type this, I guess. Yeah. It will automatically import this. So yeah. So this is how admin middleware is defined. So we have the request user, and if the role of the user is admin, we want to pass the control to the X controller. And if it's not an admin, then we are going to say it's unauthorized. So let's give it a try. So inside the products.ts, after the auth middleware, we are going to pass admin middleware. So now let's see and let it reload. Okay, the app is crashed. I am not sure why. It says the port is already in use. Let's run this again. Okay, so app is working now. Let's hit send. You can see that it's unauthorized now. Even though we are like passing the authorization token, it says unauthorized because the user is not of type admin. So let's go into the Prisma Studio and try to modify it to admin. Now let's see the request. Now you can see that it succeeded. So now this route, the create product route, is protected with the admin middleware, or the admin, only admins can access this route. So this is how the role-based middleware works. Now in the next lectures, we will proceed forward and create other routes for the products, like get products, like the listing of the products, and get product by IDs and updating everything. So let's see in the next lecture. Hey there everyone. Now let's go ahead and finish all the product related routes. So what I have done is I have created 4 controllers here just to save a little bit of time. So one is the update, delete, list and get product by ID controller. So it will update the product, it will delete the product, it will like list all the products in a paginated way, and it will list a single product based on the ID. And I have used these controller in the routes as well. So put route for ID as a param will update it, same for the delete. Get route on slash, like the root route, will list all the products in a paginated way. And similarly, if the ID is passed as a param, we will list that specific product. One more thing I have changed is earlier in the description was of type simple string. So in the MySQL, it restricts us to use only certain number of characters in the database. So in order to make it like unlimited characters, we have to use this at db.text. So it makes this column as a text type in MySQL. It is only required in MySQL. So if you are using Postgres and all, you don't need to give this operator. Yeah, simple string will be treated as text. So it is only required for MySQL. Now let's go ahead and finish all the controllers here. So for the update, we need to first wrap it inside try catch, because we need to explicitly catch the error if the product does not exist. So in the catch, we can simply say throw new not found exception, and in the message we will say product not found, and in the error code we will say error code dot product not found. Now in the try, first we will say const product is equal to request dot body, and we have to change couple of things here. So if tags are given in the product, we need to make it as comma separated values. So we need to explicitly put a check here. If tags are there, we need to change it, otherwise just proceed. So if product dot tags, then we have to say same things. Product dot tags is equal to, we will say product dot tags dot join, and we want to join it with comma. So this is done. Now we can simply update the product. So we can say const updated product is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot update, and update takes 2 arguments. So one is the where clause. So in the where we will say ID request dot params dot ID, and by default all the parameters are of type string. So we need to explicitly typecast it to number, because ID is of type number in our database. And the second argument we give is of type data. So data will be product. And we will simply say response dot JSON, and in the JSON response we can say updated product. So this is all what we need. Now let's go ahead and give it a try. So in the Postman, I can duplicate this request, and I can change the name to update product. So let's try to first refresh this. I have created like 20 products here so that we can test out the thing. So let's try to change the price of this product, which is ID 46. So let's say 46, and in the body we can say price So price, let's suppose 100. Yeah. So let's hit send. It says cannot post. Okay, so obviously it's not a post request, it's a put request. So let's hit send now. I forgot slash here. Okay, so now you can see that it's working. So if I try to update a product which does not exist, for example 12, it throws an exception which says product not found. So update is working. So the homework for you guys is to implement this delete product. It's for assignment. It's same as the update product. You just don't need to do all these things here. You just need to call a delete and pass the where argument. And inside the catch, you have to simply throw this exception. Now let's do this for the list product. So for the list product, we need to have a pagination here. So the response which we want to send is we want to send the total count of the object as well. So for example, count 100, and then we want to send the data as an array. So this is the response structure which you want to send. So we need to perform two queries here. So first, to get the count, so we will say const count is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot count. So it will give all the counts. Now the count is necessary because we need to provide front end some data so that they can write the logic of pagination on the front end. So that's why we send the count. And once we have the count, we can get the product as well. Products is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot find many. And inside the find many, we will pass two arguments. One is a skip, and this skip will be in the request dot query dot skip. And if skip is not there, then we will pass simply 0. And apart from skip, we can pass take. So we want to restrict the page amount. So we don't want to give front end that control. So backend is responsible for sending that. So we will hard code the value to 5. So if skip is not there, we are telling just return the first page. And if skip is present, then just do as it is. It's giving an error. Okay, so we need to typecast this to integer as well. Now it's fine. Now in the response, we will say response.json count, and inside data, we will say products. So this should work. Let's give it a try. Go on to the Postman, just save this request and duplicate this. And we will say list products. It will be get, and just remove this params. Let's try to hit send, and you can see that count is 20. And since the value of skip is not given, we are sending the first 5 results. So now if we give skip is equal to let's skip 5 and hit send. Now you can see that the ID is from 51. So list is working fine. So let's save this request. Now the last one is get product by ID. So it is very simple and straightforward. What you have to do is we have to obviously wrap it inside try catch because the product may or may not exist. Now inside the error, we will simply just copy this and throw this exception, and we will say const product is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot find first or throw, and inside find first or throw, we will pass where ID is equal to request dot params dot ID, and just pass this as a response. So this is pretty straightforward. Now let's give it a try as well, and just duplicate this and change the name to get product by ID, and here let's get the ID of 1 and you can see that product not found. Let's say I want to get the product with ID 50. It still says the product not found, but the product is there. I am not sure what's the error is. It says request.params.id. Okay, makes sense. Let's try to print the error. It says the app is crashing. Address already in use, so I'm not sure if node-mon is creating some issue. So we will say npm start again, app working. Let's try to find this again. Okay, now it's working. So I guess it was an issue of node-mon. That's why it was not working. So you can see that all of these things are working, all of the 4 routes. Delete product is for assignment, so let me know in the discussion section. So in the next lecture, we will finish up some user related routes as well. So we will create a separate model to store the address of the user, and then we will assign some billing address and shipping address to the user. So let's see you in the next lecture. One more thing, if you have noticed here, is that we are not handling the validation errors. So if I show you in the Postman, just go to the sign up and try to remove this password and hit send. So even if there is a validation error, it's still saying something went wrong, because when we are saying sign up schema.parse, we are not handling that anywhere, whether this succeeded or failed. So what we can do is, in the error handlers, so we are checking for the HTTP exceptions here. So if the error is of type HTTP exceptions, we don't need to do anything. But if it's not of type HTTP exception, there is a chance that it's a validation error. So we have to place another check here. So we can say that if error instance of Zod error. So Zod error is a type which is exported by this library Zod, which we are using to perform all the validations. So here we can say that exception is equal to new bad request exception, and we can say that unprocessable entity. And in the error code, we can say that error code dot unprocessable entities, and we can pass the error. And inside the else clause, now we can move this statement up. Now it should work. Now if you go to the Postman and give a try, you can see that it's now giving an unprocessable entity exception. So name is the Zod error, and you can see that the password is required. So that was a bit of a change which we need to do in order to handle this exceptions regarding the validations. Now let's go ahead and create the address model for the user. So we'll say model address. We will copy some things from here. Let's copy this all and paste it. We will remove all these things, and in the maps we'll say addresses. So it will be the addresses table, and in the address we will have line 1. It will be of type string. Line 2, it will also be of type string, and it can be optional, it's not mandatory to have this. So for optional, we can place this here. And apart from this, we can have city of type string and country of type string. And apart from that, we can have pin code as well of type string. So this is all what we need for the address, and we need to link these two models. So address must contain a user. So for that, we will have a user ID, and user ID will be of type int. And then we have a user, and user will be of type user. This is how we establish one-to-many relation. So a user can have multiple addresses. and we'll say add relation, and inside add relation we'll say fields, user ID, and it references ID. So this is how you establish the relation. And for the reverse relation, we will have addresses here, and it will be of type address array. So the relation is established. So one user can have multiple address, and every address must be linked to a user. So user ID is given here, and it references the ID field of this user table. So it is like pretty obvious if you have followed the course till now. So I am sure you must be aware about this. So let's quit this, and we will say npx Prisma migrate dev, and we will give it a name of add addresses table. So it's created. Now what we want to do is in the auths, where we are sending the current logged in user, we want to send the address as well, and then we will create, like we can either send it here or we can create a separate route where we can list all the addresses of a user. So we will go with that approach. We'll create a separate route where we can list all the address of a given user, and we will create a simple one more route to delete the address and one more to add the address. So 3 routes in total. So let's do that in the next lecture. Now let's go ahead and finish all the address related routes. Now I have done a couple of things here before recording this lecture. So I have created 3 controllers, the boilerplate add address, which is used to add the address of a user, delete address, and the list address. And apart from that, what we have done is we have created a separate routes folder for the user, routes file for the user, where I have used all 3 controllers here. So /address :id, and then get route with the address. So this is all in place. Now just let's first finish this controller, which is the add address controller. So for this, first we need to create a schema. So in the users.ts, let's say export const address schema, which is equal to z.object. So for the address, what we need is we need line 1. It will be z.string. Apart from this, we need line 2. It will be also z.string, but it can also be nullable. Apart from this, we need pin code. It will be z.string, and it will be of length 6. So the pin code here are of 6 length, so I'm just keeping it as 6. Apart from that, we need country, which will be simply z.string, and I guess what we have city as well, city and user ID. Okay, so city will be also of type string, and then we have user ID of type number. Okay, so we have address schema in place. Now what we want to do is, first we will say address schema dot parse request dot body. So it's parsed. Now first we want to fetch the user, so we want to wrap it inside try catch, because a user may or may not exist. New not found exception, and we will say user not found, and the error code will be error code dot user not found. Okay, so it will be full stop. And inside try, first we will say let's create a variable of user. It will be of type user. So we are using TypeScript, so let's utilize the types as well. So user will be await Prisma client dot to user dot find first or throw, where ID is request dot body dot user ID. So we have user in place. Now what we want to do is we want to say const address is equal to await Prisma client dot address dot create, and inside create we want to pass data, which will be request dot body, and for user we will have user dot id, and we'll simply say response dot json and address, not add address, simple address. Okay, so it should work. Let's give it a try. Let's go to the Postman and create a new folder here, and we'll say it as users. Now duplicate this request and drag this request to the user so that we can have a template of the request, and now change the name to add address, and in the API we have to say it's users and address. So it's a post API. In the body we will say nothing and let's hit send. You can see that the validation is working fine. Now what we want to do is we want to say line 1. So I live in C 671. Line 2 will be, let's say, parking road and city, let's say Delhi. Country is India, and in the pin code, let's say 1234. Now let's hit send. Okay, so pin code is different, and apart from that, what we are saying, user ID, we need a user ID as well. Okay, so let's say user ID 1, or maybe let's say 51. I guess the 51 user ID exists. So we have this. Let's hit send. So the pin code validation is also working fine. So it says user not found. Okay, so at least we have surpassed the validation. Request dot body dot user ID, it's fine, I guess. Okay, so 51 user obviously does not exist, so let's try with 1. It still says user does not exist, so I just need to go to the users tab, and okay, the ID is 8, 9 and 10, so my bad. So we will say 8. Now it says Prisma validation error, so it's an unhandled exception. So let's see what's the issue is in the tab. Okay, seems like there is some issue. So okay, so the issue was in the user, we are assigning user.id, so it will be user ID. So we need to assign user ID to this variable. Now let's see if it's working or not. Now it's working fine. So add address is working fine, but here is an issue. For example, we are taking a user ID as a request.body, but this is not ideal, obviously. So what we want to do is we want to extract the user from the auth token itself. So because if someone is authenticating and using our app, he or she will only be responsible for creating its own address. So there is no point of taking the user ID in the request.body. We can simply use the auth middleware and get the user from that auth token. So this change we will make in the next lecture. So let's see you there. So in this lecture, we will see how we can use the auth token and get the user from there instead of taking the user ID in the body. So we need to make a couple of changes here. So first in the schema, we have to remove this, and then in the users, we can remove this as well. We don't need this. Now in the routes, since like we have used this auth middleware, obviously we will not be using any admin middleware here, so it's wrong. So let's remove this. So since we are using auth middleware, we are like sure that we will get the user in the request.body. So what he'll say that request.body.user.id. Now let's give it a try and see if it's working or not. So let's try to do this again. So we will remove this user ID from here and see. Something went wrong. Okay. So let's try to debug that. There is no error object as such. Okay. Makes sense. So what we can do is instead of this, okay, so it's not request.body, it's request.user.id. So it was my bad. So let's hit send now. Now you can see that it's working. So that was the issue. It's not request.body.user, it's simply request.user. So it's working fine. Now you can see how we can use the token to get the current logged in user. We can remove all these unused imports. Now let's go ahead and finish all these two routes. So for the delete, we will wrap it inside try catch because address may or may not exist. So we will say throw new not found exception, and we will say address not found, and in the error code we need to add one. So we will say for all user related things we are using one, so we can say address not found, and it should be 1004. Go into the users, we will say error code dot address not found. So it's fine now. And why is it giving an error? I'm not sure. Okay, so it was an import error. And apart from this, we will say await Prisma client dot address dot delete, and inside delete we will say where id is equal to request dot params dot id, and we have to typecast this to int, and once it's success you can say response dot json, and we'll say success colon true. You can simply send the status code. It's not necessary to send the body in every response. So you can say response dot status 200. So that will also work fine. And in the list address, it's pretty straightforward. We don't need to have pagination here because hardly any users add 5 or more address. So that's why. So we can simply say const addresses is equal to await Prisma dot address dot find many, and inside find many we will say where user ID is request dot user dot ID, and we'll say response dot json, and we can say that addresses. So this is how every route works. So I guess you have an idea of how these things work now. Now in the next lecture, in the user schema, we will have 2 more fields to store the default shipping address and default billing address, because in multiple e-commerce application you have seen that you have certain default addresses stored there. So we will design that functionality, and apart from that we will see how update user and all these things work. So see you in the next lecture. Hey there everyone. Now in this video we will write the controller for updating a user. So I have written a boilerplate for the controller and its respective route as well. So it is a put route on slash and we are using the update user controller with auth middleware. Now I have to do few things. So first is to define the default shipping address and billing address in the user model. So let's do that. It will be of type int and it can be nullable. And same goes for default billing address as well. Although we are not working on the payment gateway, but let's give you an idea of how things work. So default shipping address and default billing address. Let's migrate these. npx Prisma migrate dev and name. And default addresses. So it's done. Let's run the server again, npm start. And now first we have to define the schema here. So for the schema, go to the users.ts and define the update user schema. z.object. And what we want to update is we can update name. We will say z.string and it can be nullable. Apart from that, we want to update, let's go ahead and see name, and let's update these two things as well, which is default shipping address and billing address. So it will be z.number. It can also be nullable. And same goes for this. Dot nullable. So this is how the schema works. Now let's go ahead in the controller. So in the users controller, in the update user, first we will verify this schema. So we will say const validated data is equal to update user schema dot parse, and we will say request dot body. Now if we go into the schema, let's make it all caps because let's keep it consistent. So here we'll also say update user schema, and in the imports we have to say update user schema. So it's fine. Now you can see that now I'm holding the result of this parse in a separate variable. Earlier what we were doing is we were simply using the request.body after the parsing. So if you hover over this, you can see that the type is automatically inferred. So this is the benefit of TypeScript. Now we have to do a couple of things here. We have to write a couple of try catches. So this try catch is for validating the shipping address. So we will say, first let's define a couple of variables. Let address of type address, and same for billing address. Now in the first try catch, what we are going to say is shipping address is equal to Prisma client dot address dot find first or throw, where id is equal to validated data dot default shipping address. I guess it should be id here, not just the default shipping address id. No. We can, I have made a mistake. It should be id here because we are not storing the complete address here. We are just storing the id. So, okay, let's use this only then. I made a mistake there. The ideal name should be default shipping address ID. So let's see default shipping address. And if shipping address is not found, we want to throw an exception. So let's copy this from here. And we will say not found, address not found, everything is fine. And this thing we only want to do is if validated data dot default shipping address. So we will move this inside try catch because we want to perform this operation only if user is trying to update the shipping address. And same thing we have to do for billing address as well. So we will say default billing address. Let's copy this default billing address and it will be billing address. So it's fine. Let's close this first. So we have validated these two things. Now let's update the user. We'll say const updated user is equal to await Prisma client dot user dot update, and we will say where id is equal to request dot user dot id, and in the data we will say, or we can directly pass the validated data here, and in the response dot JSON we will pass the updated user. So this is how update user controller will work. There are a couple of things more which we have to check. So if the shipping address is found and if shipping address dot user id not equal to request dot user dot id, then we have to throw an exception here, new bad request exception, and we have to say that address does not belong to user. And in the error code we have to define this error as well. So in the root.ts we can say that in the users only address does not belong. Like you can give whatever name suits you the best. I am just giving the simple name here, and we will say error code dot address does not belong, because user can attach the shipping address, its own shipping address. So we have to write this explicit check here, and same in case of billing address as well. So billing address dot user id is not equal to request dot user dot id, then we have to say address does not belong to user. Now let's go ahead and test this controller first. So just go to the postman. Let's first save these requests and we'll duplicate this request, and we will say update user. And inside the body, what I want to say is I want to update the default shipping address, and go to the Prisma Studio. And if you can see that in the address, we have two address there with the user ID of 8. So I am logged in with user ID 8. So that's good. So let's change the user ID of one of the address to see if the error is working fine or not. So I want to attach the address 2 to that user 8. So let's see if it's working or not. Send cannot post, so obviously it's support API. Okay, you can see that invalid type, name is required, default shipping address is required, and default billing address is also required. But I guess we have made all these things nullable here. Yep, these are nullable. So I am not sure what's the error is. Okay. Update user schema. Here. Okay, let's give these things first. Name, empty, but empty name will like override that, so it's not the point of giving the empty name here. I am not sure what the error is. First, let's see if it's actually calling this controller or not. So we'll say console.log. We will say update user called, and just open the terminal. Okay, the app is crashing. Maybe that can be the reason. So let's npm start again, because it's creating the port problem sometimes. So I'm not sure why that's happening. Okay, so update user called. So it means that update user schema is working fine. Okay, so the issue was in the documentation, they suggest using optional instead of nullable. Like, I'm not sure why it's not working, because in the previous versions I used to write this code, so nullable was working, but now they are saying to use the optional. So let's use this. Like, if you go into the documentation, they are saying to use this optional here. Now let's see if it's working or not. It's giving address not found. So I guess the issue is in the controller. This is throwing an error and it's coming inside this catch block. So we just need to remove this and place it here, and same for billing address as well. Now I guess it should work fine. Let's see. Yeah, now it's saying address does not belong to the user. So if I change it to 1, you can see that now it's working fine. So this is how update user works. Now in the next lectures, we will see how to design the cart functionality. Now in this video, we will define the cart model. So let's define that. Model, we will say cart items. And let's copy a couple of things from here. We don't need name, description, price, and tags. And for the table name, we will say cart items. Now, every cart item will have a user, for which user that cart item belongs. We have a product, so the product in that cart, and we need the quantity as well. So we need 3 fields. So let's copy the user from here and use this for the product. We will copy the same thing and replace user with product. Same goes here. It will be of type product, and relation will be on product ID. And we need to define the reverse relation as well, cart items. And we need to do the same thing for users as well. So in the users, we will say this. So the model is defined. We need one extra field, which is quantity. So quantity will be of type int. Now let's go to the terminal and define the migration. We will say create carts table. So I guess it should work fine. Yeah, so the cart table is created. Now in the next lecture, we will define the controllers. Hey there everyone. Now in this video, we will work on the cart. So what I have done is I have created a cart controller here and defined 4 methods here. One is to add items to the cart, one is for deletion, one is to change the quantity, and then one to list all the items of the cart of a given user. And apart from this, I have created a routes file as well. So post and get route on / will add item and list items of the cart respectively. And we have this params for the cart ID then to delete the item or the changing the quantity. So let's first work on adding item to the cart. So for that we need the schema. So go to the schema and create a file, which is cart.ts. Let's borrow some code from here. Let's copy this, paste this here. We need product ID and we need quantity. And this will be of type number. This will also be of type number. Remove this email. So this is create card schema. Now go back to the controller and use this. So we'll say const validated data is equal to create card schema dot parse, and we will say request dot body. Now we will fetch the product as well based on the product ID. So we need try catch. So in the catch, we will say throw. It will be not found error. And the message will be product not found. And the error code will be error code dot product not found. And in the try, we will first create a variable here, let product of type product. And we will say product is equal to await Prisma client dot product dot find first or throw, and inside the where clause we will say where ID is equal to validated data dot product ID. So now we have the product. So we will create the cart item. Const cart is equal to await Prisma client dot cart item dot create and create. We will pass the data and we have to pass couple of things. First is user ID. So user ID will be request dot user dot ID. Then is the product ID. Product ID will be product dot ID, and then we have quantity. Quantity will be validated data dot quantity, and then we will say response dot JSON, and in response dot JSON we will say cart. So let's give it a try. Go to the Postman and create a separate folder here. We will name this folder as cart, and in the cart, let's first duplicate this, move it to the cart. We will change the name to iron item, and here we will say carts, and inside the body we will say product ID 1, and we will say quantity as, let's suppose 2. So let's hit send, and you can see that put is not working, so it's post. Okay, so it's still running. I am not sure what the error is, so let's see if it's working or not. Let's try to rerun this. Again, the port is causing some issue, so maybe that's the reason. Product not found. So let's grab a product ID 46 and hit send, and you can see that the cart is created. So if you go into the cart item, you can see that user 8 has 46 like cart ID and the quantity is 2. So it's working fine. Now let's go ahead and work on a different controller here. So go to the cart, add item to the cart is done. Now we have to delete item from the cart, change quantity. So let's work on the delete item first. So first we have to say, it's straightforward, like delete is pretty straightforward. So we can say that await Prisma client dot cart item dot delete, where id is equal to request dot params dot id. And once it's done, so let's typecast this to int. We will say response dot json, and we will say success to true. So let's give it a try. Let's duplicate this request. We will say delete item, and it will be a delete request on cart id 1. So let's hit send. Okay, it's creating an issue. Let's see if it's working or not. Again, like the port is causing an issue. I am not sure if nodemon is creating an issue or what. So let's reload this. You can see the success is true, and if I reload this, you can see that the cart is gone. Now here are a couple of assignments for you guys. So first, what you have to check is, check if user is deleting its own cart item. So basically you have to check that if the cart item.user.id is not equal to the logged in user, then you have to throw an error. And in this controller, what you have to check is if the product already exists in that cart, we don't have to like add an additional product. We have to simply increase its quantity. So we have to see, check for the existence of the same product in user's cart and alter the quantity as required. So let me know the solution of these two things in the discussion. So, and if you want, I can make a separate video, but these are pretty straightforward. So I hope you can do it on your own. So let's see you in the next lecture, and there we will finish all these two routes. Now let's go ahead and work on these two routes. So what is the change quantity and what is the get cart? So in the change quantity, first we will fetch the cart. So we will say, and change quantity, like we will receive simply the quantity in the schema. So if you want to validate that, you can in the schema cart.ts, you have to define a separate schema, and let's do it anyways. Export const change quantity schema is equal to z.object, and here we will have this. So now let's go back to the cart. We have to validate this as well. Const validated data is equal to change quantity schema dot parse, and we will say request dot body. Now the quantity is validated. Now we have to update the cart. So we'll say const updated cart is equal to, so we will say await Prisma client dot cart item dot update, and inside the update we have to pass two arguments. So one is the where. So where id is equal to request dot params dot id. So it will be of type number, and apart from this we have to give data as well. So in data, quantity will be validated data dot quantity. Now return the response dot json. We will say updated cart. So this is done. Here also you have to do the same thing. So you have to check if the user is updating its own cart item. And in the get cart, it's pretty straightforward. So what we have to do is we have to create a variable const cart is equal to await Prisma client dot cart item dot find many, and inside find many it will be where, so where user ID will be equal to request dot user dot ID, and we have to include one thing basically. So we want to fetch the products as well. So we'll say product colon true. So this is how you include the relation. Now simply we will say response dot JSON and cart. So these two should work. Let's give it a try in Postman. So let's duplicate this request first. And here we will say change quantity. So here you want to change the quantity of cart to, because if we go into the Prisma and reload this, you can see that the ID is 2 and the quantity is 2. So we want to change the quantity to 4. So let's go ahead and do that. We don't need the product ID. We need to change the quantity to 6, let's suppose. Okay, so it was, a put request. So in delete, I guess it has deleted this cart. No issues. We have to create one cart item here. So the cart is created, the ID is 3. Now let's try to do that. By default it was delete, so it deleted that cart. So cart ID is 3 now. Now you can see that the quantity is 6. So if I refresh here, you can see the quantity is 6. So it is working fine. Now what I have to do is, apart from this, we have to test one more thing, which is get. So duplicate this, change the name to get cart, remove this, and it will be a get request, hit send, and you can see that the cart is retrieved. So if there are really multiple items in the cart, so it will be array of all the cart items. So it is working fine. Now in the next lecture, we will see how we can create the order from this cart. Hey there everyone. Now in this video, we are going to create the models related to the order. So we will be requiring 3 models. So one is for storing the orders, and one will be for storing the products of all the orders. So it will be a many-to-many relation, explicit many-to-many relation, because not only we will be mapping order and products, but also we will be storing the quantity. And apart from that, we will be having an order event as well. So if order is out for delivery, accepted, cancelled, and all these things. So let's create them. So first we will say model. So let's borrow something from here. We will have the user ID. We will have not the product ID. Then not the quantity. Apart from that, we will be having the net amount. It will be of type decimal, and it will be orders. What else do we need in order? We will be needing the address as well. So address will be of type string. So we will be computing the complete address from this address model. So the comma separated address, which we have seen on the cards. So we will be computing that and storing it as a string in this order. And apart from that, I don't think so we need anything else. So let's create the reverse relation as well. So in the user, we will be having orders. So it's done. Now we will need another model, which will be order product. And again, we will be copying the same thing. And here we will be having order ID. Because this product will be linked to any order, and it will be of type order. And apart from that, we need a quantity. It will be int, We don't need address here, and it will be order products. Let's establish the reverse relation as well. Products, and it will be of type order product. So it's completed, and we have order ID, product ID, we need product as well. So let's copy this. So we will say here product ID. It will be of type product. And in the product, let's establish the reverse relation. We will say, so it will determine in which order this product belongs. So, and let's say order product. It will be of type array. So it's completed. Now we need one more table, which is order events. So it will be order event. Let's again copy this. Store it here. We need order. We don't need product, and we don't need quantity as well. And we will say order events. And inside the order, let's establish the reverse relation as well. So it will be events, and we will say order event. And we need one more thing. So event, obviously. So we will create a enum here. So let's go on top and create enum. So it will be order event status. So we will first, the order will be like pending. So it will be in the pending state, then admin will approve this. So it will be then go to the accepted state. Sorry, yeah. And after accepted, it will be, let's say, out for delivery. And then it will be delivered. And apart from this, we will be having one more, which is cancelled. So these are all the order event status. Now let's use this. So we will have status, and it will be order event status. We will give a default value as well. So it will be, so we can have the default as pending. So whenever the order is created, we can give it a pending. So it will be pending. So we have all three models here. Let's create the migrations for these. Let's quit this, and we will say create order tables. Let's wait and see if it succeeds or not. Okay, so it succeeded. So we have all the three tables in place. Now in the next lecture, we will create the controllers and try to create all the routes for that. Hey there everyone. Now in this video, we will finish some routes regarding the orders. So I have created few routes here. So one is the create order, list order, cancel order, or get order by IDs. These are all the routes related to the user. In the further videos, we will see how we can create the admin routes as well. So these are all the controllers here. And similarly, I have defined a route file as well, which is orders.ts, and I have listed all the routes here. So let's first start on this create order. So this create order will be a bit complex. So there are a couple of steps which we will follow. So let me write it down. So first will be to create a transaction. Because we will be dealing with the multiple models and the queries, so transaction is required. Second one will be, so once we create the transaction, second one will be to list all the cart items. To list all the cart items and proceed if cart is not empty. So if there are no items in the cart, then simply we will return an error message, else we will proceed forward. Now apart from this, no, it's not empty. Okay. Now apart from this, what we will be needing is, once the cart is received, we want to calculate the price. Calculate the total amount. Once the total amount is also calculated, we want to retrieve the address of the user. So fetch address of user, and apart from that, like, we will fetch it, but we will also want to create the formatted address as well. So we will be like needing a computed field, so we will define that. So fifth part will be to define computed field for formatted address on address model. Once everything is done, we want to, sixth step will be we will create order and order products, and as a it will be order and order products, not order routes. Okay. Seventh part will be create the event related to that order. So by default, the event will go inside pending state. Create event. So these are all the things which we will be needing. Let's comment this out. Come on, what am I doing? Okay. So let's start working on these step by step. So first part is to create a transaction. So first you will say return await Prisma client dot transaction, and inside transaction we will be passing an async function which will receive the transaction object here, and then we'll perform all the queries inside this arrow function. Now first one is to, like, the create transaction is completed. Now the second part is to list all the cart items. So const cart items, then await. So now we will perform all the queries on this transaction object instead of Prisma client. So we'll say transaction dot cart item dot find many, and inside find many we will say where user ID will be request dot user dot ID. So we have all the cart items. Now we will perform the check. So that check will be if cart items dot length equal 0, then we will say simply response dot JSON, and inside the JSON we will say message cart is empty, and we will return from here. So we don't want to proceed further if the cart is empty. Now if cart is not empty, then what you want to do is we want to create the price. So first we will calculate the price, and that price we will be calculating it using the reduce function of the array. So we will say const price is equal to cart item dot reduce, and inside the reduce we will be passing an arrow function and the initial value. So initial value we will start with 0, and this arrow function will receive two arguments. So one is the previous value and one is the current value. So the previous value will be of type number because we will be computing the price of each item in the cart, and the current value will be the current cart item. So we will iterate over all the cart items and calculate its price. So we will say return. So inside the return we will say previous value plus, and we want to say current dot quantity, and that quantity will be multiplied by, so we want to fetch the products here as well. So we will say include product true, because we need the price of the product as well. So we need the product model. So we will say current dot product dot price, and let's typecast this to number. So this will iterate over all the cart items and it will calculate the price. So if you're not aware about the reduce function, maybe you can read it on the MDN docs. So it will start with 0. So it will say 0 plus the first cart item's quantity into its price, then so on, and it will calculate the price. So once the price is also calculated, we have to fetch the address. So we will say const address is equal to await. So we will say transaction dot address dot find first, and inside find first we will say where, sorry, id will be equal to request dot user dot default shipping address. We can store default billing address as well, but let's do it for the shipping address, and it will be same for the billing address. So address is also there. Now we have to include the custom field like the computed field of formatted address on the address module. So what we will do is we will go inside this index.ts and the place where we have defined this, initialize this Prisma client. So here we want to extend it. So this is how we extend the or create the computed fields if you had followed my lectures. And what you want to compute, so on the results of address, we want to attach an extra field which will be formatted address. That formatted address, it will require couple of things. So it will require line 1, it will require line 2 as well, then city, country, pin code, and then we will say compute, and compute will take a function, and the argument of this function will be the address, and then we will say return. First it will be line 1, sorry, address dot line 1, then comma, address dot line 2, then again comma, it will be city then, so address dot city, then comma, then it will be address dot country, and then dash, and then finally it will have the pin code. Yeah, so it will work like this. So we have extended this address model to attach a formatted address computed fields. Now once we have all the information here, now what we want to do is we want to finally create an order. Const order is equal to await transaction dot order dot create, add inside data. We will say first we will say user ID. So let's pass user ID first. So user ID will be request dot user dot ID. Then it will be price, or I guess it was amount, net amount. Okay, so the amount will be equal to the price which we have calculated. Apart from that, we'll have address. Address dot formatted address. Now you can see that we have autocomplete here. And then we want to create the product as well. So we will say product create. So we can create the related fields here as well in the single query. So what we want to do is inside this create, we want to pass an array of all the products. So we can simply map over this cart items dot map. And we want to return something, and it will receive the cart one by one. And what we want to return is, first we want to return the product ID. So it will have cart dot product ID, and then we will have quantity. So cart dot quantity. And if everything is succeeded, then the order will be created successfully. Now once the order is created, then we want to do is create an event as well. So we will say const await transaction. Are we outside the transaction? Yeah, so this will go inside this transaction. So we'll say transaction dot order event dot create, and it will also receive a data field which will have order ID. Order ID will be is equal to order dot ID, and apart from ID we will have status. So by default the status will be pending, so we can leave it as it is. So we have order event. Now there is one more thing which I forgot. So the 8th step will be to empty the cart. So once the order is created, there is no need of the cart. So as a final step, we will say await, transaction dot cart items dot delete many, and inside delete many we will say where user ID is equal to request dot user dot ID. So these are all the things. It's a pretty complex create order function. So just go through it, and if you have any issues, let me know in the discussion section, and I will happy to help you out. And once everything is done, what you want to say is return response dot JSON order. Now let's give it a try in the Postman. So go to the Postman, create a separate folder for the orders. Let's duplicate this, move it inside the order, and we will change the name to create order. Rename this to orders, and inside the body we don't need anything, so let's remove this. Now in the Prisma Studio, if you go in the cart item, we have one cart item for the logged in user which has quantity 6 and user ID 8 with the products 46. So let's see if it's working or not. Okay, so it's still running. Maybe I need to restart the server or what. Let's restart the server first. Now let's hit send. Okay, so you can see that the order is created. The net amount is 600. ID is 2, order ID is 2, and user ID is 8. So if you go into the Prisma Studio, go into the order, you can see that we have a live order of net amount 600 because in the cart item, okay, the cart item is deleted. So in the order product, we have the product 46 and the quantity is 6. So 46 product, the price is 100. So multiplied by 6 is 600. So everything is working fine. Order event is also there with the status of pending. So everything seems to be working fine. So this is how the create order works. With all the transaction, we have like utilized all the functionality here, how to create many-to-many relations, how to deal with transactions, and then the extended models and all these things. So it's a pretty good exercise. Now in the next lectures, you will see how these list order, cancel order, and get order by ID works. So one thing which I forgot in the previous lectures was we are storing the history of all the events for the order, but we have to store the current status of the order as well. So to do that, in the schema.prisma file, we have to add an extra field in the order, which is status, and that status will be of type order event status, and here we will give a default value of pending. Now let's run the server. So let's create the migration first. Add current status. Now I guess it should work. So in case like we are creating the order here, so by default the order will go into the current state of pending. So I hope like you got my point. So it's important to store the history as well, like on which date and time the order, like the status of that order was changed. So when it was in pending, so and on what date and time it got out for delivery and all these things. But on the other hand, we need to store the current status as well. Obviously, we can compute the current status by this order event as well to fetch the latest event of that order, but it's convenient to store it this way in the order model. So yeah, so that's all from this lecture. Now in the next lectures, we will finish all these routes. Now let's finish all these routes. So first is the list order. So in the list order, we will say const orders is equal to await Prisma client dot order dot find many. And inside where we will say user ID is equal to request dot user dot ID, and we want to include a simple products as well, because we can do that in get order by ID, because in the front end we will first show the list of all the orders, and then if someone will click on any particular order, then we want to show the detailed version of that order. So let's do it this way. In the get order by ID, we will fetch other things as well. So it's pretty straightforward. We'll say response dot JSON and we'll say orders. Let's finish this as well. Get order by ID. So first we will say const. So I guess we need to wrap it inside try catch, because order may or may not exist. Yeah, and here we will say throw new not found exception. And I guess we need to define an error code as well. So let's copy this. Here we will say order not found. And let's start all the orders with 6. Now in the not found exception, we will say error code dot order not found. And inside try, we will say const. I'm very bad at typing, so pardon me for that. Await Prisma client dot order dot find first or through, and here we will say where ID is equal to request dot params dot ID, and here we want to include certain fields. So what we wanted to include is, we want to include the products as well. And then we want to include the events as well. So these two things, sorry. So yeah, and we will response.json simply return this response with order. So these two things are completed, and inside the cancel order, it's straightforward. So let's copy this, do this. So once we have fetched the order, or instead of like doing this, what we have to do is order.update, and inside the update we will say where ID is equal to request.params.id, and inside the data we will say status and as cancelled. So this is how we have to do this, and we have to create an event as well for the same. So we don't need to store that in a separate variable. We can do that await Prisma client dot order event dot create data. We will say order ID. Order ID will be equal to order dot ID, and status will be cancelled. So this is how it should work, and here is a couple of assignment for you. So first, what you have to say is wrap it inside transaction. So these, like this controller involves a couple of queries. So wrap it inside a transaction, and apart from that, check if the user is cancelling its own order. So you have to do these two things. So it's pretty straightforward. and let me know the solution in the discussion. Now let's try all these things in the Postman. So create order is there. We have to first save this. Now duplicate this. And we have to say list orders. It will be of type get. So let's see. Okay, it's throwing an error. I guess the server is not working. So let's run the server and see if it's working or not. Okay, list order is working. Now duplicate this as well. And we will say get order by ID. Here it's get, so order ID is 1, I guess. Okay, order not found. So order ID is 2, I suppose. Okay, so now you can see that the products and events are also listed. Now let's save this and create a separate route for cancelling the order. So duplicate this and say is cancel order. It will be a put request on order ID 2. So this should work. Cannot put on this. Okay, so I guess it's /cancel. So let me check. And the routes order, so it is /cancel. Okay. Now you can see that the status is cancelled. Now if I again fetch this, you can see the status is cancelled and we have 2 events here. So one is for pending and then is cancelled. So all these 3 routes are working fine. Now from the next lectures, we will create the admin related routes where we can modify the orders or change its status. List all the orders based on all the filters, like list all the pending orders, list all the cancelled orders and all these things. So let's see you in the next lectures. Here everyone, now in the upcoming videos, we will see how we can finish all the admin related routes. So here are a couple of things like which I have written down. So first is regarding the user management. So for the user management, we will be needing list user API. This will be paginated. Then one API to list a user by ID, because then we will list all its address and all these things. Apart from that, we need another API to change the user's role. So these are the things which will be controlled by admin. And in the order management, we will be needing similarly an API to list all the orders and change the order status. And at last, for the products, we just need a simple search API for the products. Now this will be for both users and admin, because users will be able to search the product on front end, and same for the admins as well. And here we will learn the new concept of full text search. So let's get started with all these things. So if you go into the users controller, I have created the 3 routes. So one is 3 controllers, one is list user, get user by ID and change role. And in the users routes, I have used all these 3 controllers here. So put on /role will change the role, get on / will list all the users, and similarly for ID. So let's finish this first. So what we are going to do is, first is list user. So it is pretty straightforward. So what we are going to do is, so we will say const users is equal to await Prisma client dot user dot find many, and inside find many we will give 2 arguments. One is a skip, so how many rows we want to skip, so it will be request dot query dot skip, and if it's not there, then we want to simply return the first page, and we will typecast to number and take, and we want to keep the page size consistent to, let's suppose, 5, and we will say response dot JSON and users. So it is pretty straightforward. Now get user by ID, here we have to wrap the code inside try catch. Here we will throw the exception. So it will be not found exception, message will be user not found, and error code will be error code dot user not found. And here we will say const user is equal to await Prisma client dot user dot find first or throw, and here we will say where id is equal to request dot params dot id. And if you go into the schema, and for the users, we can see we have address and order. So for the user management, we just need address because cart and orders are like not really necessary. So if we want to fetch the orders of any users, we can create an API which can list all the orders of a given user. So we will also do that in the order management. So let's fetch only addresses for this given user. So we will say include addresses colon true, and we'll say response dot JSON, and then we will say user. So this is also complete. Now in the change role, this is also pretty straightforward. So let's copy this first, and here we will say update. So where ID will be this, and we will not have include here. Instead we will have a data field, and inside data we will say role, and it will be request dot body dot role. Now you can perform the validation here as well. Validation, so you can define a schema, so you can do it on your own. The schema will have a single key of role, and it will be of enum, so just do it on your own. So let's give it a try for all these three routes. So first let's check if the server is running. No, it's not running. So let's run the server first. Okay, now go to the postman and the users. Simply duplicate this request, and we will say list users, and in the body we don't need anything. It will be a get route. Hit send. You can see all the users are listed here. We have only 3 users, so obviously 3 users will be listed. Save this, duplicate this, and now change it to get user by ID, and here we want to simply fetch the user 8. Hit send. You can see now the address is also fetched, so it is also working fine. Now again duplicate this, and we are going to say change role, and we want to change the role of user 7. So let's see if it has 7th user or not. Let's close all these tabs first. So we have a user 9, so let's change the role of this user. As of now it has a user role, so we want to change it to admin. So let's see, change it to 9. Inside the body we will say role to admin. Let's hit send. Okay, it works. Now if I reload this, you can see, okay, it's not working. Role is still user. So let's see if what's going on wrong here. Okay, I need to change this as well. Sorry, the route. So let's check the route first. So slash role. So it will be slash ID slash roles. So it was my mistake. So it will be slash ID slash roles. I guess it's role only. Yeah. Now let's hit send. Cannot get. So it's a put route. Now you can see that we have admin here. Now if I refresh this, you can see it's changed to admin. So all these 3 routes are working. Now in the next lecture, we will see how we can complete all these routes. So let's add one more thing here. List all orders of given user. And also we want to list the order by ID as well. But if I go inside this orders.ts, I guess we have this route. So there is no need of a separate route here. Admin can use these routes only. So, but for admin, I guess you are aware, we have to put this admin middleware. And if admin middleware is not like there, so either admin or user both can access that route. So that's how it works. So let's see in the next lecture then. Now let's go ahead and finish all the order related routes for admin. So as usual, I have created 3 controllers. One is list all the orders. One is to change the status, and the last one is to list the orders of a given user. And in the routes.ts, I have used all these 3 controllers. So on /index, it will list all the orders. /users :id, user ID, it will list the orders of a given user. And put on /status will change the status. So let's do these. So first, for list all the orders. So first you want to fetch the filter const status is equal to request.params.status. So if status is present, we want to do something. So first let's construct the where clause. Let where is equal to where clause is equal to. So in the where clause, we want to, as of now, we don't need anything in where clause because we want to list all the orders irrespective of any filter. But if a status filter is given, so we will say where clause is equal to status : status. So it will be just a status here. Now let's remove this. Okay, so if a status is there, we need to alter the where clause and add the status here. Now we can say that const orders is equal to await Prisma client.order.find many. And inside find many, we can simply say where clause skip. We want to obviously include the pagination as well. So we will say request.query.skip or 0, because as usual, we want to fetch the 0th page if no skip is given, and take, let's say, 5. So it should work. Let's typecast this to number. Now we can say response.json orders. So this is how list all orders work. Now for change status, it will be pretty straightforward again. We want to wrap it inside try catch. So let's copy this here. And if there is any error, we will say order not found. And if there is no error, we will say update where, and instead of include, we want to give the data. So data will be status : and we will say request.body.status. And apart from this, we want to create an order event as well. So we will say await Prisma client.order event.create. We will say data and order ID. And for the status, we will say request.body.status. So it will create the event as well. Now we need to wrap this inside the transaction. So let's do this as an assignment. Wrap it inside the transaction. And so yeah, it should work, I guess. Now for list user orders, we want to do again the same thing. So let's copy this from here, paste this. Now instead of where clause, initially where it will be user ID. User ID will be equal to request.params.id, and it will be integer. And what it's saying, okay, so first we need to extend the where clause as well, and then we can do that. And let's give it of type n. So it should work. So if a status is given, we need to first include this user ID as well and then the status. So I guess it should work now. So yeah. Now let's give it a try, all these three routes. Go to the postman and the orders. Let's close all these things first. So let's first duplicate this. Now it will be a get route. Order/index. Let's hit send. It says order not found. Okay. Seems like there is an issue in the route definition. We need to define this route at the very last, I guess, because /:id, like this index route is picked by this :id. So it's treating index as an ID. So we need to define this at the very last. Route order is important, so please take care of that. Now let's see if it works or not. Yeah, so it is working. Now let's give it a status. So its status is equal to accepted. So let's hit send. Okay, it's still giving the status as cancelled. So I guess its status query is not working. Request.params.status. It will be query.status, sorry. Because we are sending it inside a status query, not the parameters. Now let's hit send. It's giving an empty error. So we will test it in a bit once we change the status of any order. And let's rename this list all orders. Duplicate this and we will say change status. It will be a put route, and for change status the route is /status. So it will be /:id/status because we want to change the status of any given order. Add in the controller. Yeah, controller is fine. So let's give it a try. So I guess the order ID is, let me check the order ID first. Order ID is 2 and we want to change the status to accepted. So we will say order ID 2 and status, and inside the body we will say let's hit send. Okay, it says accepted. Now if we go to the list all orders, so the status is accepted filter. Now let's hit send. You can see that the status filter is working fine. Now one more thing is left, to list all the routes for a given user. So I guess it's pretty straightforward. You can test it on your own. So let's not waste time in that. It will work in the same way. Just give the user ID here. Now in the next lecture, we will see how full text search is performed in Prisma. So let's see you in the next lecture. Hey there everyone. Now in this video, we will learn about full text search. So for that, I have created a controller which is search products, and in the routes. So if you go to the routes, we have this route of /search. So the route will look something like this. So it will be /search ? Q is equal to, and the string that you want to search. So Q stands for query here. So in the production, like the best practice, or you can see the convention that we use is Q is equal to, and then the search term. So this is what we will follow. Now to get started with this, first let's go to the full text search documentation. So it's still a preview feature, so there are steps to enable that. So first we have to add these lines, full text search. Now before we move to implementing the full text search, now first understand what full text search means. Now in the conventional databases like the relational databases, you can search on a single column. So for example, in the schema.prisma, for the products, we have couple of columns here: name, description, price, tags, and all these things. So in a conventional search, either you can search using the name column. So in like the SQL, you have seen that keywords like or contain, something like that. So either you can search using a single column, but there is no way where we can see if the keyword exists in multiple columns. So full text search enables us the capability to search across multiple columns in the same table. So now we get what the full text search is. Let's enable this. So this is for PostgreSQL and this is for MySQL. So for MySQL, you have to add these two things as a preview feature. So let's copy this and go to the schema.prisma, and in the client add this. Now after this, we have to run Prisma generate, so npx, so that it can fetch the required things for us. Okay, now you can see that it was successful. Now in order to enable this for the products, we have to add an index as well. So in the products, we will say at full text search, and here we have to list all the columns that we want to perform, like through which we want to search a given keyword. So we will say name, and we will say description, and then we will say tags. So in these three columns, we want to search a given query. So now it's done. We need to generate the migration as well. So we will say npx prisma migrate dev, add full text search. Yeah, so it was generated successfully. Now it says already in sync because I have tried few things before, so mine was already there. So for you, if you will try it on a new project or this one only, it will say the migration was generated successfully. Now let's run the server again. npm start. Now let's go to the controller. So the end controller, what we will say is const products is equal to await prisma client dot product dot find many. Inside find many, we have to give a where clause, and for where clause, the fields that we have defined in the full text search here, we have to give all these fields inside the where clause separately. So if you go into the documentation and scroll to the indexes, you can see that if we have defined the full text search on content at title, we have to give both these fields. So, and it says, however, if you will try to search on title alone, the search will fail. So if it's saying that if only content is given and you skip the title, so it will fail. So we have to define all these three here. So go to the controller, and first we will say name. We will say search request.query.queue, and let's do this to toString because somehow it was giving an error. So it will work now. We will convert everything to string. Same goes for description, and same goes for tags. So this is how it works. Now in response.json, we will say products. Now let's give it a try. In Postman, I have already created a search product route. So it's product/search, and the query which I am given is, let's say, cotton. So let's hit send. So there are a couple of products here, and if I search the word cotton, you can see for the first it is present in name, in description also, in the second it's also present in name, but in third you can see that it's not present in name but it's present in description. So as you can see that, and same for the last one as well. So you can see that it's performing the search across multiple columns. So that's what we need. So yeah, that's how full text search works, and let me know if you have any doubts and try to implement on your own. And just for an assignment, implement pagination here. So just complete this, finish this. And yeah, so we have all the routes in place now. Now let's see you in the next section. Now for the source code, go to my GitHub repository or GitHub profile. And my username is namishvarma17. So this is my profile. Navigate to the repositories. And here you will find this repository as Prisma resources. And inside this, you will find all the source code related to this project. So clone this source code. If you want to make any changes, please go ahead and do that. And if you want to see how you can deploy that, you can also clone this and create your own ELB files and deploy it to your own servers. So let me know if you face any issues regarding this. So yeah.